Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially this is a place where I like to geek out about my big passion, which you might be able to see behind me is tropical houseplants. So if you like videos like this, do consider dropping a like down below. It lets me know that this is the kind of content that you want me to bring out a bit more. And as a new YouTube content creator, if you do like videos like this generally, do consider subscribing each week, about 2 to 3 times a week. I will actually bring out content like this. So yeah, right, let's go into the topic of today, and you might be able to see the plant that I want to be talking in front of me. And a lot of you might be able to kind of see and go, oh, it's a palm. Look at those fenestrated leaves. This is actually an alocasia. And for those in the know with a lot of alocasias, the common name for a lot of alocasias and colocasias and even caladiums, because of their big heart-shaped leaves, is elephant ears. And it's because they have big heart-shaped leaves that look a bit like elephant ears. But this is different. This is a man-made hybrid. I don't know what it's been crossed with in order to create this form of the plant, but let's talk morphology for a moment, shall we? So you might be able to see, if I bring the stems in a bit closer, you can see that there's a slight zebra patterning on the stems. They are also slightly pink or peach in color. And this is a plant that, as you can see, the big feature on it is the fact that it's got fenestrated leaves, and it does look a bit like a palm and less like an alocasia. But its care is very similar to alocasias in terms of what I found. So light, airy soil mix, maybe slightly denser than you would get for some of the philodendrons or even some of the anthuriums, because alocasia, colocasia, caladiums, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but they tend to be plants that grow near, not right next to, but near rivers. So they are used to having a bit more water in their soil. And that's the weird thing a lot of times with these types of plants, because they also have tubers. So generally when there's tubers or codex type plants, they don't necessarily want that much moisture because they kind of store it in that tuber or in the cortex. But with a lot of alocasias, colocasias, and caladiums, they do like to have a bit more water readily available. Be careful that you don't overwater because you can still cause root rot. But back to this plant as well, and I'll bring you in to have a quick look. There is also a bit of an inflorescence coming in with most of my plants, most of my aroids actually. Most times the inflorescence is just a spathe-like, it doesn't smell, it doesn't look particularly different from each one of them. But just for my own curiosity, I will always let them flower at least once, just so I can see what the bloom is like, take some pictures for my own records, and then chop back any other bloom that comes in after that, because essentially with a lot of these plants, they put in a lot of energy to push out those blooms, whilst what I want them to be doing is not pushing out blooms, but pushing out more foliage. So taking out that bloom will then release some of that energy back into the plant to get more foliage growing from it. Now, in terms of care for this one, as I mentioned, it's very similar to other alocasias. I do have some pups that are growing in, and you can see when the leaves come in, they're not quite as deeply fenestrated as the more mature leaves. This was also one of the alocasias that I thought during the winter was going to go into full hibernation. Most of my alocasias don't, but and it did lose quite a bit of its foliage, and I know some people have struggled a bit with this one. Each one of there's 3 stems in here, 3 growth points essentially in the pot. Each one of those had gone down to either 1 leaf or 2 leaves. But it kind of makes sense. There's less surface area for this plant to photosynthesize, especially in the winter when there's less light. So as with most of my alocasia, this is another one that I will give it as much light as possible. So even a south-facing window. Do remember to obviously keep it moist if it's going to be that bright, because it will use up more moisture. So you might need to water it more regularly in the summer months where it's much, much brighter. But generally speaking, a relatively easy alocasia to care for. I would generally say, though, if you're kind of just getting into alocasias and you're struggling a bit with the more standard forms of alocasia, this does have a bit of a price tag that comes with it. Maybe don't attempt to try this first, because it does have its own kind of idiosyncrasies in relation to some of the other alocasia. Get the alocasia care down pat for some of your more common alocasias, because they are replaceable. This one's, as I said, is a bit more expensive. Not hugely so, but a bit more expensive and a bit less easy to find. I think there's only 1 or 2 growers in the Netherlands that are creating this specific hybrid. And then maybe after you've kind of become a bit more confident with alocasia care, then move on to trying something like this. Because as I said, even for some of the more seasoned alocasia owners, this can be a bit of a challenge. Not hugely so, not as not as fussy as a lot of anthuriums, but still a bit of a challenge. Very, very cool plant. I don't want to deter you. It's definitely a medium size, and you don't get a lot of medium size alocasia, so it's not as small as a lot of the dual alocasias, like the black velvet or even the dragon scale, but it's not quite as large as some of the larger alocasias like the Zabrina or the Dorata, I think. So it's kind of a medium size. Again, I'm not entirely sure because this hasn't been grown widely for a very long period of time. And I think we've pretty much, everybody that's got the plants now have got them at the same stage as probably the growers had after they hybridized them. So these might get larger as time goes on, but I don't know. For now, it does look like it might be a medium-sized alocasia. It didn't get much larger than this last year, and now that it's coming back, it's about the same size. So I would assume it's kind of a medium-sized alocasia. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about this plant. If you've got any questions, comments, as always, do drop them down below. Let's have that conversation. I know there's a nice little community being built in some of the comment sections of my videos at the moment. So it's really, really great to see you all interacting with each other and giving each other advice. That's awesome. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks. Bye.